All right. Hey, thanks for being on our Monday, our Mile High Market Brief. We got a ton of things that we're covering today. And, we decided when Charles and I were discussing this, we decided that it's impossible for us to not keep talking on these Mile High Market Briefs a little bit at least about the Zillow situation with the MLS and I know for my team meeting, I don't know what you guys did in Arvada last week, Charles, but at Summit County and Vale, we talked a little bit about this MLS situation. And last week's news was that another MLS, in addition to MRED, which is the Chicago area and most of Illinois, another MLS has threatened to cut the Zillow feed. And this is Real Tracks out of Nashville. And I was on Zillow a couple minutes ago, and there hasn't been an update that I've seen, but the feed still appears to be working because there's a gazillion listings right now. But they were supposed to cut access beginning June 1st. So I'm sure later today we'll hear what's going on. This is the second MLS that has decided to target Zillow. Now, if you are following like the related story is that a bunch of MLSs, maybe 8 now across the country, have said that they're willing to post Compass's listings on a national level. And what you should recognize and read into that is Compass has been calling around MLSs and saying, hey, look, if we can get out of putting our listings on Zillow, would you be willing to let us give you some money in exchange for posting our listings anywhere? And MLSs are businesses. I mean, I think we think they're like the friendly neighborhood service that's just, here to serve realtors and their clients. But make no mistake, an MLS is a business. And by the way, if you want to make a lot of money, create an MLS. This story is a fight about private listings. Zillow is saying that they refuse to display certain listings that are essentially being publicly marketed but not put into the broad consumer access of the MLS, and that MLSs are saying, well, Zillow's violating our rules, but the real story remains that Compass is in the background. Charles, what else are you seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, so this is that portal war conversation that is not going to stop by tomorrow. So we're going to continue to have this conversation because it's important. And what we have to keep in mind is this: what happens is we have Zillow, and that's what our consumers know. Our consumers understand that they can go to Zillow and they can pull information from Colorado all the way to Florida and everything in between. And it does not matter what state you are in, they know the Z word, and that's where they are going. And so, how does Zillow make money? Well, they bring in all the listings and then they sell out that information. Well, now what's happening, right, when we're keeping this in mind, is that Compass is like, whoa, 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 we're not going to put all of our information out for the consumer to look through this because we want more eyes on our website. And so now what's happening is Zillow's like, cool, do whatever you want. But then if you do come back to us with this one property, we're not going to put that listing on our site. So now what we're seeing is Compass is going out to all these MLSs. And so we're in Colorado. So our big major MLS, let's call it RE Colorado. Well, RE Colorado, even though the name says Colorado, doesn't mean that they can't be in any state that they want to be in.
Right.
And so the issue that we're running into is this national MLS, if you will. And what we're going to be looking at over these probably next couple of months is, can a MLS break out of their state and have such a recognition that the Z word starts to disappear? And these are kind of what we're going to see in these portal wars going forward, is who can have the bigger brand recognition to where we can have more information across multiple states where the consumer can go to one place. And we're going to see it from the brokerages, we're going to see it from the MLSs, we're going to see it from other third-party lead aggregators. And this is very, very important for everyone on this call because we understand that we need the eyes on our clients' listings. And what that's going to do is obviously that gives us more brand recognition. It gives you more validity in the space. And this conversation is not going to go away anytime soon.
For sure. What's interesting, I think, also about this, I got my license I think it was 1995, maybe.
Yeah.
Charles, how old were you in 1995?
I was 5 years old.
5 years old. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I got my license in 95. And I think, stop laughing, Danielle. I think that I joined the MLS in about 2000. And I believe at the time it was, like I got to my AOL account and I had, you all remember, some of us here remember like the sound of like anticipation as the dial-up modem logged you in. And I got into real estate during a time when it was possible to see everything in your community. And what's interesting about this is like right before me joining the real estate industry in the early 2000s officially, or at least the realtor part of it. Right before me, if you wanted to look at homes, you had to go into someone's office and get the book, and you only could go to the book at the offices that were somewhat successful because the less successful offices couldn't afford the book. And prior to that, um, prior to the book, you had to go into the office just to see what they had for sale. And the real challenge, in my opinion, is like we almost appear to be regressing to a place where if you want to buy a home in Vale, you're going to go into Keller, you're going to go into Engel and Volkers. I'm looking at Marla. You're going to go into Berkshire, you're going to go into Compass and Slifer, and you might have to go into all of those different offices in order to see things. It seems like that's what some of our competitors are pushing. And remember, Compass has recently acquired Anywhere, so they're saying, well, we got lots of agents in lots of different brands and we can cooperate among our brands. But the bottom line is no matter how you slice and dice it, this is bad for consumers because broad based marketing, meaning everybody gets to see the property, is good. On a related note, there was an opinion article in, I think this is Zillow, and the guy's name is escaping me. If you guys can recognize him, great. This Zillow economist just said Compass just told you who benefits from private listings, and oh, by the way, it's not the seller. Zillow is doubling down against private listings, and if you've been listening to Charles and me for a few weeks, or watching Inman or Housing Wire or Riz Media, Gary Keller is on board with this. We believe that private listings reduce transparency and reduce competition. And we believe that the fight is over information. I mean, Zillow says that buyers and sellers make better decisions when everyone sees the same inventory. And Gary Keller says the exact same thing. He's been pushing for the widest marketing possible forever and continues to push that way and is writing op-eds over and over again about this. We think that private listings create artificial scarcity. And in other words, we're going to our people and we're saying, hey, you don't want to put your home on the broad market and have all those eyes looking at it, which we all learned in like that business class we took in ninth grade. We all learned, or, they didn't call it business, but we learned about the law of supply and demand. And when you can market something to a large audience, the price goes up. Now, there are maybe a 0.5% or 1% of listings that, for various legal reasons, need to be kept private. But that is not the case for the vast majority of properties. Charles?
Yeah, but make no mistake about it, and I think we need to double click on that. So this play that is being ran is 100% we want the eyes on us because if we have the eyes and we have the listings, then where are the buyers going to go? Well, if they only can go to the website which has the listings, all right? So let's just play this thing out because let's call it what it really is. Compass is saying like, hey, we are one of the largest brokerages in the world at this point through acquisitions. And what they're saying is we want all the eyes to come to compass.com or whatever their website is. And so if all the consumers are saying, well, I'm interested in this Compass website or this Compass listing, what do they have to do? They have to go to the Compass website. And then what does that mean? That means they're going to double into deal. There might be sub-agency again, which goes back to why we created buyer agency, because we know that's a crazy concept. And so what are we looking at? Well, there's a lot of very smart people in the industry that are saying that this is going to really come down to probably three or four brokerages at the very end of this. Compass is looking like a competitor. You guys are absolutely one of the competitors in this space as well. And so whoever has the most listings means that they're going to have buyers coming to their websites. And so Gary Keller says, hey, this is not good for the consumer. But what Gary Keller has done that says, well, if this is the road that we're going down, we're going to make sure that our agents are armed. We're going to make sure that our agents have the tech that is going to be able to do this. And with that being in mind, what you guys have to understand is this. You are one of three brokerages in the world that owns its own tech. Compass is one. They bought Contactually back in the day and they rebranded it and kicked all the agents off of it that weren't a part of Compass. We have Redfin that owns its own tech. And you at Keller Williams, we own our own tech. And at any point, if this is the route that we're going, we can flip a switch and we can play that game. And you guys are not going to lose any business because of this, because of our tech platform. We don't believe it's good for the consumer, but we are absolutely geared to help you win if this is the route that the industry goes.
Yep. Awesome. So, national news, housing inventory just turned negative year over year. Charles, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so as we're looking at this, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that this is about rates. 100% this is about rates. And when we're looking at it and we're thinking about all the things that are happening that are making the unaffordability that we are seeing inside of the United States, we are seeing the first negative year over year reading after we were seeing these strong gains from 2025. So we're still seeing a lot of multi-year highs when it comes to inventory, right? We're seeing definitely more inventory than we did in 2020 through 2023. And we just went through a holiday. So we also have that information because we understand that any holidays where we're going to go out and we're going to have a 3-day weekend, most people are going to go, especially in Colorado, we're going to the mountains. We might be getting on a boat. We might be doing something leisurely, and that affects the nation at the same time. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to look at this and say, oh my gosh, we're coming to a recession, we're coming to a housing crash, we're coming to insert whatever here. This is rate driven 100%. But Russ, we're not necessarily thinking this is the same thing in Colorado, are we?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is this is a national story, and so it's out there and it's worth knowing. Um, Inventory in Colorado is still up. So just because the national trend is that inventory has turned negative, the Colorado trend is that we have more inventory and we are pushing very much towards a buyer favorable or a buyer friendly market. So we're sharing this for context, but we're not sharing it because it's what's happening in our area. But as happens throughout the country, we'll eventually seep into where we are. And I think the important piece to remember there is buyer behavior is really important in Colorado. Buyers have options in Colorado that they don't have in other parts of the country vis-a-vis housing inventory turning negative. Buyers in Colorado, unlike other parts of the country, are comparing multiple homes and they're focusing on value, condition, and price. So when you see this headline and your clients see this headline and they think they're going to get 2022 prices on their listings, we want to arm you with the real truth about what's happening in our neck of the woods, and that helps you not making mistakes with overpricing. So back on Zillow, and not the same part of Zillow, but research from Zillow. Zillow has updated home price forecast across 400 housing markets. We've been talking all year that we think things in 2026 are going to be slightly better than 2025. And I don't remember if it was on this Mile High Market Brief or on my team meeting, but I recently noted that my gut tells me things are going to be slightly worse in 2025. And Zillow was listening because they've now taken their March forecast plus zero point 0.5 to their April forecast slightly worse plus zero point 0.1. And now they're saying minus zero point 0.1. Charles?
Yeah, and so after I did send all of Russ's insights over to Zillow and they were able to reforecast out, right? What we're looking at is this, everyone. Like we are truly looking at a war that is going on right now, and this is what is driving a lot of this behavior inside of our market. And right, I don't think anyone had this on their bingo card, is that we were looking and we were saying, hey, consumers are getting more and more comfortable when they are looking at interest rates. And with those interest rates, they're saying, well, hey, consumers are actually comfortable around like 6.6 at this point, which we understand in Colorado with our price point, that tends to slow us down probably a little bit more than the rest of the nation. And yet, when we're looking at it, what they're saying is, hey, Zillow's forecasting the Denver's prices are actually going to decline around 2.8%. And yet, here's the deal. Think about where we've been since 2020 and the increase in values of homes that we have seen. And I think this is a very, very, very important conversation that we need to have in the back of our mind that when we're talking to buyers and sellers and they're talking about, well, we're losing money on our home, this 2.8% decline. Well, here's the thing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, when did you purchase your home? And we look at when they purchased their home and we look at the value over there. No one's losing money on their home unless they bought in like 2022 to about now. That time period, absolutely, you're probably losing some money. But think about the consumer that bought in 1990. This 2.8% year over year decline is not affecting them whatsoever unless they have been refinancing over the years.
Yeah, this is where you got to take your clients and show them the path that got us to where we are now seeing the 2.8. If we zoom in on this map, you can see, and here's the color. The redder colors are the negative appreciation. Is this a pre? Yeah,
Yep.
negative appreciation, basically all of Colorado. You can see the positive up east, generally speaking, or in kind of the flat to positive Midwest. And California is California.
And we
So
saw that, right, Russ? So we saw this migration. Remember what happened in 2020? We saw the digital nomads going to those panhandle states, right? That's where they were going, and they were going into Florida. Well, now since that has all transpired and we saw people get called back to work and no more of this like digital nomad movement, we saw this trend where they were actually going to the Northeast. And
mhm.
so this is nothing more than just the market moving from different areas, which we always see. And so that's why we're seeing more of these states that where they were going through and they were moving at scale and then they were actually going through and we were seeing more building happening. Well, they're slowing down and we're seeing
Yeah,
more of the Northeast taking off at this point.
my friend bought a house and from a builder, and he closed on it with the he closed on the package. By the time the builder had built the house and he was ready to move in Austin, Texas, the home was worth twice what he paid for it. He never moved in. He sold it and did the same thing again, and now he's moved up east. Like
Yeah.
he's out. He's just chasing the market, and you can see Austin is like the deepest red,
Mhm.
and look at the Northeast. So, credit card and auto loan delinquencies look like 2008, but housing does not. This is kind of interesting. So when we look at credit cards and auto loans, and Charles and I were talking offline about, the average auto loan right now. Charles, I actually looked it up, is like $950 a month. That's the average dollar amount that people are spending on their auto loan. Crazy. Serious delinquencies are near levels last seen during the great financial crisis of 07, 8, 9. But housing doesn't look like that. Homeowners are still performing on their mortgages because think about where our rates are. I mean, I think 42% of the population, well, 42% of the population, I believe, has no mortgage. And then another like 40% of the population is somewhere below 5%, something like that. So we are just not seeing the same thing. Homeowners and renters are in different positions where credit stress is showing up among renters, but homeowners tend to have stronger credit profiles. Regulations have changed the game. I mean, Dodd-Frank back in 2000, what was that, eight or nine, has changed the way that you qualify for a mortgage. And now we have people with mortgages who had to put money down, actually went through a full underwriting process to see if they were risky or not. And things have changed. Charles?
Yeah, I think about this when I go back and I purchased my very first car. I couldn't give you the year around this was, but I had no parent supervision, and I went and I found the car that I wanted. It was a Jeep Commander with the Hemi, and it was white. It was a beautiful car, and I remember finding this car at a used car lot, and I remember going on, and I didn't do any of the pre-work before, and I sat down to the financing table. And the guy actually went through and said, "Well, hey, I actually have the ability to go up to X amount of dollars on this interest on this loan, but I'm only going to do it at X, whatever that dollar amount was." And this is the thing that we're running into with this car industry right now is that they're going in and they are not as regulated, just as Russ said, with the real estate industry, right? If you just went through real estate school in the last handful of years, you're talking about TILA and you're talking about RESPA, and there's no more fog in a mirror. Go watch The Big Short, right? There's all these issues when it came to housing. And yet, not everything has followed, especially when we're talking about cars. And when we talk about credit cards, think about how easy it is to have a credit card, go onto Amazon and say, you know what? I can get this tomorrow morning if I spend X amount of dollars. Or if I'm buying this, I also need to grab this. And that's how simple it is at this point. And so people are looking at their credit card with these endless dollar amounts, plus how easy it is to purchase stuff on their phones right now. And this is where we're getting into. But yet, when we look at the balance sheet of home ownership in the United States, because of all these rules that are in play, we have some of the best books when it comes to real estate right now. And this is not 2008. And these are the conversations we need to be having with our consumers, whether they're thinking about housing crash or Airbnb bust or silver tsunami or insert whatever garbage here. It is simply not the same. And there is nothing on the radar that is going to even remotely suggest we are going to see a giant reset.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of equity in the United States right now collectively. Two more things we want to talk about. Charles, I'm going to let you take co-buying.
Yeah, so here's one of the things that I think is a very, very interesting conversation that as we're looking at this, and we used to probably call this house hacking, right? Where I don't know about you guys, but I remember going to several of these Ben Kinney classes, and they would talk about how he would actually go buy a half of it or a full duplex. He would go live in one and then go rent out the other one, and someone would be essentially paying his mortgage. Or I remember back in high school and hanging out with some people that were homeowners at the time. And looking at this, they were actually renting out different rooms of their house to be able to afford their mortgage. And we're seeing this right now. What we are absolutely seeing in this space is we are seeing multiple people go in on purchasing a home. And what they're doing is they're able to say, well, this is how much we make. These are our assets. And they're able to get a bigger home. Plus, with the appreciation and everything else that is happening, like this is not a bad play. And I think this is one of those conversations that we might need to start putting into our repetition as we're having these conversations with people. They're like, oh, you know what? I can't afford a home right now. And it's like, well, what is your roadmap over the next handful of years, your next 1 year, 3 year, 5 years around home ownership? And they're like, well, I simply just can't afford it. And I'm like, well, do you have any other friends that you think are in this boat with you? And just finding more and more paths, right? Because it doesn't have to be just your friends or investors. Like these can be complete strangers at this point. And this is where companies are actually saying that, hey, they want a piece of this because we know everyone wants a piece of real estate at this point. And now they're actually getting those people together, Russ, like when you're looking at this, what do you think like the benefits or the challenges that we're going to run into, whether it's using a platform like this or even having these conversations with our consumers?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, it makes a ton of sense that technology would make this trend move faster. In fact, Charles, we had a guy at a training last April in Denver, and I can't think of what his name was, but he essentially had a tool like this where you could go on to, it was for investing. You could go on to his app and you could say, I got 50 grand or 100 grand, and I want to get with a bunch of people and buy an investment property together. And if the investment property was $5 million, he would look, match you up with 50 other people that have 100 grand. I think I did my math right. And you would go out and buy the $5 million property together. Do you remember that guy? I can't think of his name, but anyway, he was friends with Tony Giordano, who was the speaker at that event. Um, I see technology as making this thing happen, and I think that it could make it so easy that it's becomes easy to ignore some of the fundamental challenges of going into business with other people. I remember when I was a kid, really young, my folks got together with two sets of friends and they bought a condo on the beach in Boca Raton. And it was great. It was really great until Don's, I won't say his last name, but until Don's daughter secretly moved down to Florida and lived in the property essentially like 11 months out of the year. And we tried to take our family vacation there, and his daughter was there having a party. Those types of things that happen in the real world don't get easier just because technology put it together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're probably just going to see this more and more. And to Russ's point, yes, there's going to be ones where we're going to be looking at, it's just like Uber, right? It's just like all these other platforms that are coming together. I mean, you can share an Uber ride these days if you want to. They're like, hey, you want to save some money, you can pile in with three, four other randoms that are going into the same area. And yet, this is what we're looking at. We are facing an affordability issue in the United States right now, and there's going to be many, many people putting their hands up in this space to be able to help people purchase real estate going forward.
Exactly. Hey, one last slide. We wanted to take a quick look at what's going on in Clear Creek County. This is by request from Deborah. Inventory in Clear Creek is rising. In fact, and we just said this, right? Down across the U.S., up in Colorado, Clear Creek County has roughly 22% more properties available than a year ago, giving buyers choice, reducing the frenzy of the COVID market. And that increase in inventory is shifting the market towards balance. Homes are still selling close to list price, but they're not selling typically over. And buyers are getting a little bit more for their money. They're negotiating concessions, they're negotiating discounts, they are not paying over. Prices are great, quite resilient, up year over year. Homes are taking longer to sell, and it is a great mountain market. Charles, anything you want to add to
Yeah,
close us out?
I think this just goes back to the conversations. We can talk about what's happening nationally, we can talk about what is happening in Colorado as a whole, and yet you are the industry experts and the real estate economists for your areas. And so we need to know this information to be able to have the conversations because we know what our consumers are digesting when they are getting on YouTube, on CNN, on Fox, insert whatever news channel here. And yet real estate is super hyper local, and this is what makes us the experts.
Yeah. And Charles, next week we're going to talk about rent to buy per Holiday's request, which we are out of time on today, but we will get there next week. And if you can't be here, Holiday, it'll be on our YouTube channel. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
By all.